So welcome back to Concrete Conversations. Today, we're actually going to interview Tim Phelps, who is the owner and proprietor of iCoat products. Tim, thanks so much for being with us today, and we'll look really forward to you telling your story.
Thanks, Ian. It's good to be here.
A lot of people start businesses for various reasons, some just to turn a profit. But you have a kind of remarkable story with the lineage in what's relatively a new business of coatings. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of your family's involvement in epoxies and decorative coatings.
I got into the decorative concrete industry in my 20s. I was a regional sales manager for a big company down in Florida. And I was there for a little bit, and I started realizing that their product line was a little bit stale, and it was kind of generic. Where they were doing a lot of stamped concrete and things. So I started working with some of their coatings. They were doing a coating that was mostly sprayed at that time, like a cool deck type effect.
Right.
And I started experimenting with some more of a troweled coating. There was a company they made some stuff for that started looking at that. But then they didn't really want to have anything to do with that for whatever reason. In fact, they banned the sales staff from even getting in the area where they develop products. And at the time, my dad was running a veneer plant up in Pennsylvania, and chatted with him about doing a joint venture, helping me develop that with his chemical background. And it was a little bit after that I moved up to Pennsylvania from Florida.
I know we talked before this that your father was a military contractor and chemist. Did his background play into you developing some of the coatings that we have today and some of the things that you've been using over the last 20, 30 years? Yeah,
when I was growing up, things were kind of different for me. My dad traveled a lot, and when he was working on secretive projects, one day I remember him coming home and saying he's been told he has to carry a gun all the time, and we moved around a lot. In fact, I went to 5 different high schools, including I was in Switzerland my junior year. But fortunately, I like meeting people, and I still have great friends from all over the world. But one of my favorite stories was my dad was riding in the back of a tanker truck, like maybe a milk truck or a gas truck or whatever, that the inside of it was set up like an airplane. And they had him and several of the other engineers that were working on this particular project. And they drove him around for hours in circles so they didn't know where they were going. Seemed like a movie, but it really happened.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. And just to throw him off, like the locations of where he was working, is that sort of part of it?
I guess so, yeah.
Wow. Did he tell you sort of what sort of chemical things he was working on? Obviously the military has a lot of stuff that's considered classified, but to this day, is there anything of his work that you know way more about?
Well, he was a specialist in coatings, and it was originally things that they would coat circuit boards with and coppers and other things. But he had some formulas that he used for pipe linings that I think came from a buddy of his. But he was involved on different projects all the time, and they were big, long projects. Like he'd work on a project called ELF, which is extremely low frequency, and it was for submarine communication.
Wow.
Yeah, and he did a lot of different things like that, but it was always something that he's working on.
Yeah, when did your dad make the leap from working as a military contractor to the public sector?
Well, after he got done with that ELF program, then he took a job that was not in the government contract field. And it was because we were moving around all the time, and he was getting tired of relocating every few years. So he transferred into that. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. It would have been in the mid 80s, I think, mid to late 80s when he went to the public sector.
And was that like the start of the joint venture with you on coatings? Is that when you guys got started with that?
Yeah, well, that would have been late 80s. So he'd been in the private sector for 5 or 6 years, I would think. When I went into the decorative concrete, he was just beginning to take over this veneer plant that he was kind of re-engineering the way that they did things. So he had some time on his hands, and I spoke with him at length about helping me create a better coating because, it worked, but it didn't work the way I wanted. So he started looking into that and talking to some of his other buddies. He had a plethora of people that he'd worked with over the years, specialized in, every different thing you could think of. He was in the coatings field. He had other people that were in different coatings fields, paints, primers, epoxies, all that stuff. So we started talking about that. We started talking about what I thought might be really good for the market. And he started working on some formulations.
So even though your dad wasn't in the military, he served as a contractor. Did his work there influence you to serve? Because I know you served. Was that a part of the decision for you to go in?
Yeah, I met a lot of really cool people that he dealt with in the military, and a lot of the stuff they did was, seemed like kind of fun and top secret and all that. So I guess it probably did, but in all reality, my buddy was joining the Marines, and I went down to provide moral support. And he ended up not joining, and I did. So, he told me all this stuff, and that a young man wants to hear for sure.
Right. That's like your buddy did a bait and switch on you. You ended up turning up for him, and he ended up like throwing you in there. But look, thank you for your service. And it's one of those, as a veteran-owned business, I never served, and it's one of those that I really do appreciate those that actually did.
I wanted to make a longer career out of it, but ended up hurting my ankle, and I couldn't do the job that I wanted to do anymore. And they started asking me if I wanted to make pie charts and stuff, and that's just not my forte.
Right. As I say, you did the heavy lifting of actually taking the time to get in there and serve, so we appreciate that. Some of the stuff you've done with iCoat within decorative concrete and epoxy has been pretty much a game changer. What would you consider as some of those products that especially have been market leaders and have changed the industry?
Again, it goes back to the industry itself was doing stamped concrete. It was doing sprayed coatings. And then they jumped from a sprayed coating to one that you could put down and stamp it. And that just had a lot of problems and didn't look very good. So I decided that troweled coatings were kind of the way to go, and that the ones that they had out there were so limited and so bad to trowel. So my dad started working on that and getting it so that it actually troweled out like butter, and that it was much easier to work, and that you could get a lot of different textures with. And so we started working on that. And at that time, we were in Pennsylvania, and in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of salt, a lot of snow, and it ruins concrete right away, so that it's really not a candidate for an overlay. So we decided that I was going to move back to Arizona, because I grew up, went to high school for a couple of years in Arizona, and it was kind of a place that I always ended back up. So in Arizona, the market is for coatings. It's really not for new concrete. It's not really for stamped concrete. It's for coatings, because everything is already concreted here, as you know. I moved back out here, started working on that, got it all dialed in, and he did some consults with some of his buddies, and we got a lot of additives, and we started formulating and mixing and proving these things on the job sites, and it worked out. So we got it so that we could bring it to market, and we went to World of Concrete and displayed it, and it got a lot of, there was a lot of contractors that were just like, oh my God, this is fantastic.
It sounds like your dad handed down some amazing gifts to you, and you mentioned that he passed away a few years ago. How do you reflect on his legacy and the legacy of his involvement with you and building iCoat?
My dad was one of those guys that he would do or try anything. He worked all the time. That's what I remember, when our weekends were filled with cutting wood or whatever, or doing the yard or this or that, but it was always work. So really I'm just value that he instilled a good work ethic in me, because I've never really been scared to do anything. And that's really his legacy, is that he inspired me, and, hopefully I inspired my kids to just work hard and be an honest guy and make a good product and get ahead in life.
I think you touched on something that's actually missing in society, which is that work ethic. Are you still now working on advancements for your products? And, is there any advancement that really just stands out at the moment?
Well, yeah. We're always working on our own product line. And, I've been fortunate to have a really good group of guys and contractors and artists and throughout the product lines and I like to stay in touch with them. I like to talk to them. I like to learn from them, but we're always trying to improve and listening to them. But there's a lot of emerging technology that we're putting in as it becomes available, of course. But I think long-term testing is the key, where we're not really trying to rush anything to market. We want to, hey, let's try this, and it may work out or it may not work out. But I don't want my customers finding out it didn't work out, after a couple of years. That's what we really do, is we do the long-term testing and things. But right now, there's not brand new technology, but it's growing so crazy. But the nanotechnology is absolutely amazing, the things you can do.
Right.
We've been incorporating some of the coloring nanotechnology for years, but there's a lot of other things that are coming out that you can use nanotechnology to really create some possibilities that are going to be amazing.
So, Tim, there's a growing demand out there, and we've heard it for years now, like for sustainable and environmentally friendly solutions. How's iCoat fixed at looking into that part of the industry as well?
Well, we've always thought about that. We only use things that are made in the U.S. because the plants are much cleaner than they would be if they came from China. So that's one of the things we do. We want it to meet the guidelines that are set forth by our country and not just brought in from somewhere else. Many of our products meet LEED Platinum standards, and our countertop system, really, when you're going over an existing countertop, you're really reusing and recycling the existing counter into something that's much, much better. For a long time, we made a product for building synthetic rock, and that was like 95% recycled. It was a great product, but it's kind of lost its way in the industry, and we haven't made it for a few years.
Obviously, for a long time, you must have had a big advantage over the competition. Do you have a lot of people trying to replicate the things that iCoat creates?
Yeah, we always have had that. Whatever I'm doing at World of Concrete this year, there's going to be 4 guys trying to do it next year. It's always been that way. But what they don't have and never had was the expertise of somebody that is actually formulating the products there. And we're not buying something off a shelf. We're making something that is what we want. And then the other part that they don't have is that they've not installed it. So if you're going to call up and talk to most companies, you're going to talk to somebody that is hired last week or last year that's never really even installed a job and has no idea how it looks after a year, how to fix it, how to maintain it, things like that. So really, our competition is such that we don't even really consider it competition. We just do our thing and improve upon it and keep our contractors loyal and our artists loyal by providing a good product and excellent customer service. We've always felt that that's the core of our company that separates us from everything else.
Oh, information's king. If you have the ability to help someone complete the job right every time, I know, which is one of your mottos, that's gold compared with just ordering your stuff from Amazon and hoping. You mentioned about stuff being manufactured in the USA, and the country's going through a bit of a manufacturing renaissance at the moment, with a lot of stuff becoming either nearshored or onshored. What are you thinking along the lines for iCoat? I know you said everything's manufactured here anyway, but do you see a more general manufacturing renaissance in and around the decorative concrete industry?
Well, I definitely think you're going to. There's incentives to do that anymore. And with, who knows what's going to happen with China, but even just shipping something over here, if it's going to be competitive, you got to think that it can't be, by shipping it that far, you just can't really compete product wise at the same price without having some kind of a sacrifice of quality somewhere.
Right. And there's many stories of Chinese chemical plants just dumping stuff into rivers, dumping it into landfills, and not disposing of things the right way. You know, I think that we've heard the same stories in and around India as well, which, you know, obviously on the environmental side of things, gives a lot of pause for concern that if you are ordering from those places, you sort of contributing to that sort of mess as well. So a question here around a support for both decorative concrete and the coating side of the business and the epoxy side as well. I know you serve a lot of people who do flower preservations, do wedding bouquets, and just the gifts that are in and around weddings and stuff. So how does iCoat go forward balancing the two sides of the industry, both with the contractors and the artists?
It's a completely diverse set of customers, obviously. You know, our contractors are probably I'm going to say 35 to 55, mostly men. And the artist side is 25 to 40, probably 90% or more women. But the thing that's the same about them is that they have an entrepreneur mentality with them. That's what's so fun for me, is to support anybody. And I like to talk to everybody. You know that I probably talk way too much, but it's fun for me to support the customers, and I love to see their businesses growing. So whether they're making floral preservations for weddings or funerals or whatever the case may be, on special occasions, or they're people that are out in the trenches pouring concrete and overlaying it every single day. It's really the same. You know, it's about providing support and having the answers that the R&D proved over the years.
Tim, you know, in the interviews that I've been doing with different customers and doing real deep dives into their business, one of the common themes is exactly that they're all so very appreciative of the lengths you go to guide them in the right direction to do a job properly. And it's been across the board from, you know, distributors and contractors out there, all the way to the people who are doing weddings in different countries and providing that. So, you know, that's a real testament to you and to the business as well. So you're obviously a thought leader in this business. I think everyone would say if you need an answer to something, ask Tim. Is there a lot of depth of experience across the industry, or just a lot of the new players, just, you know, people just trying to make a buck reselling?
Oh gosh, it really is a transient industry where I've seen so many people come and go over the years. You know, big companies get into it, find out they can't support it, find out that they don't sell it because nobody knows what they're doing with it. And it's just, there's not that intimate person-to-person contact where, again, you could learn how to do something and you might be successful in it, but it's learning the things to not do as well that are equally as important. And somebody that has no idea on how to actually install a job or make a art piece or whatever, if they don't have that knowledge, they're surely not going to be telling you how to fix something or what not to do to begin with. So I really think that's really important for me, is knowing that. So we do a lot of experimenting. We do a lot of testing. We do a lot of field work, and I stay in touch with people that are actually out in the trenches every single day, whether it's artists or whether it's contractors. I learn something from all of them and put it collective, and that helps me teach somebody else something.
Yeah, right. So that brings up an interesting thought around safety in the industry. Do you think there's enough safety precautions with the industry? Too much? Would you provide any guidance for someone who's getting into this in and around the whole aspect of safety?
Well, you know, I do think that everybody is considering their safety, especially the artists. They do a fantastic job of making sure that they've got the proper PPE for, you know, a lot of these people are pouring 100, 200 pieces at a time. So, you know, obviously they want to protect their health, but Contractors may be a little bit more lax when it comes to it. We've got guidelines that OSHA wants and other governmental agencies and things like that. But contractors might be a little bit lax as far as their safety goes, especially when it comes to eye protection. I mean, when you're mixing a 2-part epoxy or something, you just want to make sure you keep something out of your eye. That would be really bad if you got epoxy behind your eyeball or something.
Yeah, right. My goodness.
Safety glasses, I always tell them, look, wear some safety glasses. When you're 50-something, you're certainly more mature and thinking a lot more about that than when you're 20-something,
Right. The recent interview, Tim, I did with a lady, she runs a company called Blossom and Ryan, one of the biggest wedding preservation companies in the United States. Like you said, they have 20 people working. And they had a visit from OSHA. And one of the things that was really great for me to hear was that the guy from OSHA told her that she didn't need the level of protection that she needed based on using iCoat's epoxy rather than some of the cheaper Chinese stuff. And it's funny because there's actually a WeatherTech ad out on TV now where they go, hey, kids, I just bought some cheap Chinese floor liners for the truck, but you're going to have to wear these respirators while we drive the car. And it just made me think that was sort of a funny corollary between, cheap Chinese products, that some of them that really do smell, because they don't have the same level of protection and safety that we do making things here in America. You may get it cheaper, but that all sort of comes with a price. So
well, yeah, and you never know what you're going to get either. You might get something that's okay this time and something altogether different the next time, even though it's got the same label on it. There's just really no quality control or consistency with what comes from China. I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Right. Yeah. And no one especially someone who's either doing countertops or doing epoxy for wedding preservation wants to be a lottery every time. That can become a nightmare very quickly. So you mentioned a lot about being supportive. Some would ask, because obviously you are not scalable, right? So, and you put so much time in on the phone and text and everything else to talk with people. You mentioned earlier it was about getting the job done right, but is there anything else that drives you to actually spend so much time, helping people out other than obviously the kindness of your heart?
Yeah, no, I like thrive on it. I like talking to people and I like to help people build their business and I like to see their businesses, but I like to know about them and they like to know about me. And like I said, I talk a lot and I like to talk a lot. It's kind of something I do, and I take calls, nights, weekends, holidays, whatever, just because you never know when somebody's going to be needing somebody to help them. And it's super frustrating for me, if something happens to whatever, your oven or whatever, and you call the tech support line and they're like, oh, we're only open between 6 and 12:30 on Thursday and Friday. And
yeah, right.
It's like, come on, man. And I'm not really the most patient person on the earth as far as that goes, where I'm expecting that somebody's going to help me understand their product. So that's what really drives me is when I've had people call me and it's Sunday afternoon and they're expecting to leave a message and I pick up the phone because I forward the lines from work to me during the weekends and at nights. And I'm there to talk to them and they're just kind of blown away that somebody's actually answering the phone because our society's gotten away from that anymore.
Oh, I don't think there's a big business you can call today or social media company without getting someone who knows nothing about what they're doing, or it's some kind of AI bot that has no grasp of answering the question that you're looking to ask as well. And so there's no immediacy in support. It's really a sad state of a lot of American businesses, and I think they could learn from it a lot. So looking at the next couple of years, Tim, we're here 2025. Where do you see the growth in this industry? Is there any one area more than another that you actually look at growing? Or is there growth on both the wedding side of things or actually the epoxy use side of things with resins as well as the concrete overlay systems?
I definitely think that there's a really a lot of growth potential in both of them, actually. The epoxy thing is just so hot right now. Everybody's loving it. And people are learning you can do more and more and more and more with epoxy, and create a really good result. She's got 20 people working for her. I know people that have 5. I know people that have 10. I know people that have just themselves. But the thing that's the same with all of them is they're so busy. They're just so busy all the time. And some of them are saying, I've got to back off. I did so much work last year. That's all I did was work. And you've got to have a balance.
Yeah.
The growth in that's phenomenal. And in concrete coatings, there's ugly concrete all over the place. And it's just a matter of people marketing into their local area. But yeah, it's going to be good times. And the safest place to put your money is in your own house. So, people are fixing up their houses. The high interest rates are making them not move somewhere else. I don't want to move to another house because I'm going to go from a 3.5% mortgage to 9, whatever it is. It's way too high. So again, it's, people are looking around going, hey, I'm going to make my place a little bit nicer because I'm not going anywhere. So, yeah, I think there's a huge, huge potential over the next couple of years for some of these guys to feel the need of creating a much better looking, concrete patio, pool deck, countertop, whatever it is.
Tim, you mentioned that especially the Southwest is just prime for overlays, and you're seeing a massive expansion of land here in the greater Phoenix area. Albuquerque or Taos, all those areas are expanding. Vegas is expanding. It seems that this area, especially down here in the Southwest, is prime. California as well, obviously, for that side of the industry. Is there any other areas of the industry? You mentioned Pennsylvania had issues with salt in overlays and it wasn't the best for it, but is Florida, Louisiana, those sort of states, Texas, prime for overlays business as well?
Yeah, and I'm not saying Pennsylvania doesn't have a market for it, but the thing is that the concrete's different up there, and most of you're either going to have a patio or a deck, and most of the time in the Northeast, you more often have a deck than a patio. So, it's wood and engineer wood and everything else like that, but all across the midsection. I have a house in Kentucky, and I was out there, and I have a buddy that is out there, and he started doing coatings, but nobody's even heard of it. It's insanity, they don't even know that it's available and how good it looks. So everybody he shows a brochure to is just blown away and is like, oh my gosh, I can have that. But Florida's always been a mecca for coatings. And again, it goes back to they're still doing mostly spray coatings, which I'm not really a big fan of. But it can't, we can spray our coatings too. I just don't, it's just doesn't really look like something real. But pretty much anywhere in the country, there's a market for coatings. Anywhere there's concrete that's degrading,
that's where the opportunity is. So I did an interview with Olivia Lee, who's a consultant up in Canada. And one of the things she was saying about the wedding preservation, the flower preservation business, is she thinks that we haven't even scratched the surface on the amount of work that's available within weddings. And she probably thinks that we're not even servicing 3% of weddings at the moment. So, with what we know about the people who are really already, busy as can be, there is a lot of opportunity and growth in that market. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that.
So last question then. So you talked about people growing their businesses and helping people do that. What advice would you have for someone, whether they're a contractor or an artist looking to grow their business, either just getting started or someone in growth mode?
The first thing you want to do is master your craft, start with personal projects, branch out to friends and family. Hey, I can make this for you, whether it's a countertop or a, flower preservation or really about anything. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have anything to do with us. But if you start branching out to friends and family, and maybe they'll help you pay for the material, and then you can start charging, and you just start developing your craft and getting to be an expert, I've always told the guys, look, for your first job, don't do the new Disneyland, get started with a garage floor or a patio or your buddy's countertop or something, and just keep making improvements and learning from your mistakes. And, if you mess something up, do it again. Make your customers happy. Little by little, you'll get better. You'll get more proficient. You'll be able to charge more. But really, don't hide. That's always the guys that want to hide, like, oh my gosh, this guy's mad at me about the countertop. Well, don't hide from him. Go fix it. Be available. That's really what it boils down to, is take care of your customers and be available to them and make a good product. That's the key to success right there.
Okay, Tim, any last words? This is an amazing story you've got, and maybe you can also tell people how they can get in touch with you as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always available at 602-258-1114. That forwards to me. That's the main line. My cell phone is 602-692-2653. Call or text. Tim at iCoatProducts.com. We have an Instagram. It's iCoat.epoxy. You can reach out to me really about any way. I prefer text, though, to start with. And if you want to have a chat, just let me know you do, and I'll call you back. I like hearing everybody else's stories, too. So let's stay in touch.
You got it, Tim. Thank you so much. And for everyone, till next time on Concrete Conversations, we'll see you again.